Welcome back, everyone, to the Harbor. I'm your host, the Kino Cowboy, and I'm with Scott, like usual. Two bros watching cool cinema. You know how it
Just
is.
two bros, man, watching, you know, cheery, uplifting birth defect movies.
Yeah, I'm in my ethereal landscape beyond the beyond.
Yeah, Kino
Uh,
Cowboy doesn't know lighting.
yeah, I've
Ain't seen
got to.
Kino now.
I've still got to set up this new room in here. Anyway,
Yeah, movie expenses.
we're past Halloween now, but the slight spooky horror continues with The Elephant Man, with which I would think, aside from the straight story, is like Lynch's most accessible film, but still very much his own. And that's what I like about it so much.
No, it is Lynchian, and I think some of my interpretation of this movie, even though it is a straight story in and of itself, being based on true events, although changed somewhat to fit the narrative better. And we'll get into that toward the end, I think. I don't want to talk about that up front. I want to discuss the movie on its own first.
Yeah.
Um, but it's definitely Lynchian, especially the way its book ended. Um, but I don't want to get into that yet. I watched this movie as a kid. That's the last time I saw this movie. I
That's
don't know if I
yeah.
saw the whole thing, but I distinctly remember seeing this movie and talking about it with my parents as a
See,
kid.
that's how like accessible it is because I knew about this movie when I was a kid. I never watched it, but I just knew of its existence, and I had heard of the Elephant Man himself. And of course, back then, you say David Lynch, I'm not gonna know who that is. You mentioned
Yeah,
Eraserhead.
I
But
just know the Elephant Man. I my dad will just quote randomly, "I am not an animal." He'll just like say that
wow,
around the house when it fits. You know, I come from a pretty big movie family, not the biggest, but uh, I think we both do. So no, it does strike you as accessible. Yet at the same time, I think it's very much a product. I don't know. We say this all the time, but could this movie get made today? That's part of my beef with people who are talking like bitching about PC culture, basically. Who are like, this movie, Blazing Saddles, could never get made today. It's like, well, the entire studio system was different, and things get funded or not funded based on the market. So this is another example of a movie made by Mel Brooks that wouldn't be made
which is
today in the way
insane.
that it's insane.
He
And
left his name off of it, obviously for reasons, considering
yeah,
he
so
himself
people don't
made it.
walk in like, oh, this will be a jocular, you know, what's the word? A jape? A
Definitely
jape?
not, wouldn't be ableist in any way. No, but he did, just a few years before this, make his own black and white comedy that's
Right.
gothic in its own way.
And
So
he it was several years before that. When was Young Frankenstein?
77, I think, maybe
Yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah. So Young 74 actually, a bit earlier.
74. Oh, wow. Earlier than
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
thought.
it was a bit older, I thought. Um so part of the funny thing, side note, about the Young Frankenstein is that even though in America and in Hollywood, films in color had been commonplace by that point, we were fully past the transition in the 70s, of course. But in the international market, a lot of color TVs and colored pictures were still exploding. And so during the Young Frankenstein pitch meeting, he was talking with the producers, and they were like, "Okay, this sounds great. Yeah, yeah, yeah." And then Mel, on the way out the door, says, "Oh yeah, and I'm gonna shoot it in black and white," and shuts the door. And like they literally chased him down the hallway, and we're like, "Wait, wait, wait, wait! We're gonna lose money in the international market." I don't know, but anyway, I do think it's interesting, and it's a bold choice, and I think a good one to shoot this in a historical style. When I was a kid, before I knew this was David Lynch, I thought this was an old movie, from the era.
It looks
Uh,
so good. Like,
it
this
does
might
look so
be
good.
his best looking movie, in my
It
opinion.
might be.
Because, like,
Um,
yeah, it's, Victorian, and it's got this slight gothic horror to it, almost like a throwback to those older films back in the 30s. And it's everything about the lamp lighting casts long, great shadows and high contrast black and white. It looks fucking delicious.
Everything be lit by gas.
Yeah,
It's interesting. I wonder if they didn't smell it back then because they just got so used to it.
probably. Yeah,
Or there's just, human decay and feces on the streets of Victorian London so much that it overwhelms the senses anyway. Victorian London was nuts, dude. I mean, for perspective, laborers who were technically homeless, they didn't have their own, they didn't even have a place to rent. If they just were in a workhouse, they might, instead of a bed, get like basically a coffin. They would get a wooden box they could rent for the night. And if you couldn't afford that, they would put you on a wooden bench with a bunch of other people, and you just sleep sitting up. And just to make sure nobody fell forward, they would just have like a rope tied across the most, almost like the bar at a theme park to keep you in your seat.
God, Jesus,
or a seatbelt. Yeah, I mean, Victorian London was absolutely nuts, overcrowded, but that's where the work was. And that's depicted in this, and that's obviously a big part of the movie. But depicted brilliantly, and honestly, one of the best depictions of London I feel like I've seen in any movie, despite being directed by an American.
yeah. And does it give us a specific year? I guess we could see what time this happened in real life.
And some of the events of the film are actually a bit out of order. Again, I don't want to talk too much about this, but for example, the doctor met after the whole thing where he was in Belgium and had to go back to London and stuff. I think the doctor met him after that, actually, after he was taken advantage by one of his managers.
Yeah.
Certain things like that. But I understand, to tell a story, you have to play with the facts. Also, quite frankly, this is an interesting piece of history, but not, I would say, a hugely historically significant piece of history. It's not like we're making a movie about D-Day or something. So
yeah, for sure.
I can for a biopic, essentially. Even though the focus, that's part of the interesting thing, is not entirely on John Merrick, whose correct name is Joseph Merrick. Because I don't know, the guy lived to such an isolated life and could barely talk, that how do you make a whole movie just from his perspective, But I also think if you're going to make it, you have to make it from society's perspective somewhat.
Yeah,
because the audience has to be brought into his world.
That's why I was surprised it didn't show anything from like his early life or how he came to be, or because apparently he was born pretty normal looking baby, so you don't get too much info on his parents or his mom, and you see her as a little picture that he keeps, and it's obviously very important to him, but we don't get a true sense of if there was tragedy there or not. But
I think that's partially, partially so they don't have to film it and put prosthetics on a baby. Maybe that's why they made this movie. They were going to do that. And Mel Brooks was like, we need somebody who can make a messed up looking baby. And then they showed him Eraserhead, and he's like, this is perfect. This guy can do it. Like this guy knows what it's like to make deformed babies. But I like Eraserhead. What's weird to me is like, people talk about Eraserhead being so hard to interpret. Side note, to me, that's one of his most straightforward, like thematically films. I don't know. It's like, oh, this is about A, anxiety about parenthood, but also B, I think the creative process and the birthing of that. Like, to me, I saw that first viewing.
It's the number one movie that turned me off of wanting to have children.
Really? That movie?
Because I just remember how my brother would scream as a kid and stuff, and I didn't have to worry about it, take care of it. And now I think about it would be my responsibility. And then Eraserhead obviously takes that to the extreme. But
right, I'm the youngest child. What kept me off from having kids is my bank account mainly. I'm like, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, mental illness actually is a big one.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I know how I was as a kid. I was like, I don't want to deal with a little me. I don't know. That's the thing. Way. Yeah, having children is narcissistic. Because what if they end up like the Elephant Man? So the reason in universe, which is our universe, I don't know why I said that, that they explained for this is they thought, and this is true, she was not really attacked, but his mom was traumatized or frightened by a circus elephant while she was pregnant, and they think that somehow imprinted onto the baby.
Yeah.
Which is true. It is true that stress hormones and stuff affect your natal development or whatever you call it, gestation. But yeah, not like that. It's not exactly how it works.
Well,
It's it's
because
it's
in
not
the
like
real
if a
world,
it's not like if a monkey attacks my mom, I come out with a tail like Goku,
yeah,
a witch.
I'd say definitely an interesting opening because that's one of the more experimental sequences, and I bet anyone watch if I were to show that to my mom, she'd be like, "What's going on here?" And then you
Well, you can
get,
tell what's going on pretty quickly. It's
I
just
know,
done in
but
a
like
montage style.
it's a little bit of a
It's
frightening
surreal.
start for for this kind of biopic.
It's dreamlike for sure.
But also, she might just be cursed because I was reading up on the family and she had another child die of scarlet fever at age 4, and then
That was Tuesday back then, though.
yeah, but then
That,
her
that's why the life expectancy was low. People always get this wrong. It's not because people didn't live as long. They might have not lived with modern medicine and stuff, been able to extend life as much. But it's just because it's like 20% of kids died or like before the age of
yeah,
5 or something like that. So maybe even more.
yeah,
Um, so it's
but
just skewed
also
down.
her third child died of like some spinal disease or something.
Yeah,
So
she got
at like
bad genes.
23, yeah. And this is a pre-industrial revolution, so
Yeah, or during it.
well, it's like, and of course, we do get a little bit of factory imagery, which David Lynch loves.
I was about to say, of course, he's depicting Victorian London and smokestacks. As soon as
Yeah.
I saw smokestacks, I'm like, yeah, this is Lynch. Even more so than the beginning, like dream sequence. Like
Yeah.
that's surrealist and stuff, but anybody can do that. Smokestacks, that's David Lynch, baby.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. The imagery is so good. Oh my god, I love it. And so yeah, it's clear why he wanted to shoot it in black and white, not just for budgetary reasons, probably like Eraserhead. Although Eraserhead looks great in black and white too, and he
Yeah,
uses
they
it to
both
his
look great.
advantage.
Well,
But
and maybe by having somewhat of a lower fidelity, any sort of we can't tell the props are props as much, even though I guess all the props you didn't have to invent anything. It was all something that had historically, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like
like
sometimes
John
in a
Merrick looks
historical film,
good.
you can
So
tell that you watch a movie based in history, and you can tell the prop department made this whatever it is. Or the swords wobbling a bit weird. Not that there's swords in this movie, but you can tell that maybe with a bit lower fidelity, you buy into it a bit more.
yeah, for sure. And I do like the prosthetics for John Merrick. I think it looks good, and it looks
Yeah, which took I don't know how many hours. Hold on,
yeah.
it took like 4 hours a day or something ridiculous.
And
Yes, makeup took 7 to 8 hours each day to apply
God,
and 2 hours to remove. So
Jesus.
I think they shot him every other day because basically he would wake up at 5 and shoot from noon to 10. So yeah, he would get like 6 hours of sleep.
God. Yeah. And that's what's his name? John Hurt.
Yeah, John Hurt, who
Yeah.
I think is an excellent actor. He's
Yeah.
one of those guys he never I mean, he was in the 1984 adaptation. He played the main guy, whoever. Um that was probably his big Winston. I knew it was Winston. I thought that Winston was the name of the rat, but I'm getting it confused with a LARPing experience I had. Um and yeah, other than that was the biggest role. I mean, this was his biggest role, and you can't even tell it's him unless you know.
I saw him in something recently. I thought in the last
Harry
what's the
Potter,
more recent thing that he did?
V for Vendetta.
Hmm.
I don't know. He died in 2017.
Oh, okay. I'm just thinking of okay. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because we did an episode on that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
okay. Right. Yeah, I like him a lot in this
Well, I think
movie.
he's an alien. I forgot that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And now people might be watching this movie and think, well, this was a barbaric side of society, freak shows and all that, but we still have freak shows today.
It's
And
called TikTok.
yeah, TikTok. No,
Yeah.
no, legitimately, there's a lot of preying on obvious ableist shit like videos. And I'm not going to name names, but I know certain friends that engage with this side of TikTok and enjoy the
Tom Segura.
yeah, that's true. Tom Segura
And millions of people watch his podcast, and he will. Some of the people, I'm like, okay, this is a weirdo and this is fascinating, but some of those people, I think this person has a legitimate mental illness, and I don't think we should be laughing at them or putting them on a pedestal to laugh at them.
yeah,
It's like when Karen videos were really going crazy back when the term Karen really exploded. And sometimes it would be a Karen, yeah, but sometimes it would be like, this woman needs lithium is the problem.
yeah,
Like she's manic as hell right now.
yeah, and there's a lot of schizophrenic people who make TikToks and like think they're being gang stalked and stuff like that, and people are commenting like I'm in your walls and shit, which is fucked up for me to laugh at, but it's terrible. It's just absurd. It's terrible.
It's a funny thing to do, but like it's not.
It's horrible.
Shouldn't do it.
But then you get like actual like disfigured people, but I will see sometimes crazy disfigured looking folks go on TikTok live and they're doing it themselves as part of like an amusement to gain like, because you can get money through interactions on lives. So, you know, I don't know where's the line. Who am I to judge if you're horribly disfigured and you're making money off of people gaping at you? You know, like, whoa, I don't know.
It's well, in real life, Joseph Merrick was complicit with the showbiz because it's the only job he could get because he was so physically disabled. At one point, his dad, didn't have a good relationship with her stepdad, thought it would be a good idea to basically make him like a door-to-door salesman. I'm like, that's the dumbest business tactic I've heard in my life, dude. Like that makes that FTX guy look like the smartest businessman ever.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, imagine like you're in Victorian, and you might not even be literate, so you're not reading medical textbooks, which would be the only way to even learn about this sort of stuff other than a freak show. And a guy knocks on your door, and it's Joseph Merrick, and he's trying to sell you like a steam powered vacuum cleaner or whatever they had back then. I don't know.
An elixir to fix your
an snake oil.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. People are gonna scream. They're gonna draw the curtains, and that's what he faced every day. And he did some manual labor for a bit until he deteriorated and he couldn't keep up. And then at that point, he's like, yeah, I think being a freak is all I can do. Which, by the way, have you seen the movie from the 1930s, Freaks? Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think Lynch had to have been inspired by that.
Dude, yeah, he loves that movie.
Oh, yeah. Which I think this movie doesn't hit it. It hits it in a different way. Because in that movie, arguably exploitative of freaks, the narrative at least is the freaks are kind of the heroes, even though the narrative follows a normal woman. She's trying to marry one of the little people for his money. So that is seen as perverse. And that's something in some of the I read Ebert's review and I read some summaries of like the critical reception of the time. I'm sure some people brought that up, but knowing Lynch and just who he is as a personality, especially now that we have YouTube and can just watch interviews of the crazy guy, I think what gets left out a lot is his probably identifying in some ways with Joseph and with freaks. And I don't think that David Lynch feels that he's a freak, but I think he does know he's different. He has to. Yeah. That he's an artist. And I don't think he, self-flagellates for that. But he obviously has a sympathy for the weird and the reject and the outcast of society. And that comes out in this movie, especially toward the end when the freaks all decide, screw this, we're leaving this guy, this abusive a-hole, alcoholic bites.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the larger themes of this movie is how society can make people crazy, and also a general resistance to new ideas, which is something Lynch obviously wants to push the envelope with in every one of his works.
Also, I remember in like even older shows I would watch, people would make fun of disfigured people for a cheap laugh and stuff. And then it just, I don't know. I watched it kind of get under control a little bit better. So I'm wondering how it was in the 80s. I don't
Well,
know.
the R word was certainly being thrown around willy nilly.
Yeah, in the
That's
2000s
something
it was bad.
I don't remember elders talking to me about the physically disabled or anything. I think it was kind of understood. I mean, I'm certain at some point they probably said something, but my grandma was a special ed teacher, so
Okay.
that word was actually verboten in my household. Specifically that word.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm
Unless
sure
you're
if the
being
R
called.
word existed in Victorian England, they would use it a lot. Here's
Yeah.
the thing: the term idiot, because Anthony Hopkins, who's in this movie, and has hair, which is weird for me. It's weird the whole time. I don't know,
Yeah.
because he was obviously a successful actor by this point, but he hadn't had his Silence of the Lambs career blow up, which relatively late in life,
Yeah.
as Dr. Frederick Traves. Travis, how am I saying that right?
Treves.
Treves, that's it. Um, he says the man might be an idiot. I hope he's an idiot. Almost like I hope he doesn't understand how miserable his life is, which obviously
Yeah,
isn't the case.
I,
But,
I understand, I
but
guess.
that and moron, no, I wouldn't. I would honestly almost want like want to be blissfully unaware of my condition. But
Yeah.
that is true though, because that's all you know. And maybe he has memories of when he was younger and not as disabled. I mean, surely it's gotten worse over his life, and he died at age 27. Um, so he probably
Yeah.
had memories from when he was 7, 8, not as bad. Um, kind of like, but the thing is, I remember seeing this documentary where there was this man whose spine was so crooked he was almost like in that Ford yoga pose, like completely bent over all the
Damn.
time. And they asked him if he hurt, and he was like, "No." And then they fixed his spine. He was like, "Oh, apparently I was hurting. I just didn't realize. I thought that's
Wow.
just how life was." You know,
That's kind of poetic.
it is poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fish doesn't know it's surrounded by water. You know.
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering is Anthony Hopkins, his character is interested to see this elephant man so much that he pays bites for a private show. And he's like looking around the carnival the whole time and stuff. And I'm wondering how much of it was humanity and him caring and wanting to see how bad it is, and how much of it was scientific interest. I think there was a fair amount of humanity up front. I think he had honest intentions.
No, in the movie, it's definitely clear that he has honest intentions, but that's one of the major conflicts of the movie. And one thing I'll say about this movie that kind of interests me is that it's structurally very loose. But I feel like in the way biopics are, they sometimes eschew the typical, okay, we're going to set a central conflict or kind of a major dramatic question. In maybe your playwriting class, shout out Bob May. But this movie doesn't really have that. It's just kind of watch him integrate into society slowly. But I don't feel like, other than it's, I guess the question of the movie is like, will he integrate? Or how will society react to him? But it's not a central conflict of like, I don't know, Ocean's 11, can we rob this casino or something that concrete? But I feel like biopics. And I thought that 26 minutes in, and we don't get a good look at him for a while, which is smart,
Which is
standard
great.
Jaws.
Like in any horror or like monster movie, and unfortunately, I'm not trying to say he's a monster, but people see him as such, and so having that classic reveal of finally seeing him in the light as like the nurse slowly heads upstairs is fitting, and it's well executed, and there's no music playing during that sequence. There's no eerie like, ooh, something's gonna get you. It's very much like sad as he cowers in fear. Plus, dude, the blocking in this movie is great. It might be Lynch's best blocking, other than Fire Walk with Me, because it's more traditional, the kind of blocking used, which is fitting because it emulates older films and it looks right out of that era. Like I don't know, he could have made. I kind of wish Lynch would have made like a Dracula or Frankenstein or something. I don't know. It could be
He
kind of
still
cool.
could.
I know, yeah, but like I don't know. It just has that good 80s film grain, early 80s film grain with the high contrast and shit. It just looks awesome. But yeah. And it's not scored. He hadn't met Angelo Badalamenti yet, so it had a kind of a different score. Which
That's
is still
true.
a great score because
Yes.
it emulates kind of carnival music at points when it needs to, and then gets very theatrical when it needs to.
Right. And it's also very sentimental when it needs to.
Yeah.
And this is a sentimental movie. This is, I mean, of the ones I've seen a good amount of his movies. His most sentimental movie, uh, which some people, Ebert, I know, thought it was overly sentimental, or
Which one?
almost condescending to him. This movie, it's a sad movie. It
Yeah.
bummed me out when I was watching it last night.
Yeah.
Because you know, I don't know. This can't end well. The guy's spine doesn't work right.
Yeah, especially when he already knows what's coming when he asks Shreves, like, can you cure me? And he's just like, no, I don't, we can't. And he's like, yeah, I thought as much.
Yeah, in a lot of I feel like in a lot of movies it would have been a bigger moment. But the fact that it's not is why it works.
Yeah.
And I guess I almost feel like if this had been um less auteur driven, more studio moves, it would have been like this is going to be such a weird comparison. Dr. Traves would have been like Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side, like not a white savior, but like a savior figure, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then it would have been much more moralizing around how all these people react. Now, there's obviously some people in this movie, like Bites, who you're supposed to identify as reprehensible. But I don't think the movie casts judgment upon people like the nurses who are aghast at the sight. Because of course, how would you know? You know, and I don't
Yeah.
know what nursing school was like back then. I don't know if it was the same level of education that you needed. Um, but
I doubt it. And it's not, yeah, it rides the line great for Treves not being just a complete like savior. Because he is interested and he shows off the Elephant Man to that scientific board, and it's kind of similar to a carnival show, but his intentions are pure, and
yeah,
so I think so.
I think they are mostly, at least in the movie. But I think there's at least a 20%. I kind of want to, if somebody's going to show this off, I want it to be me.
Yeah, okay, but he does struggle with that, and he's the first time he sees the Elephant Man, he's brought to tears. He's overwhelmed. So obviously that's instant empathy. But and then he struggles later in the movie when he's sitting alone and wondering if he's any better than Bites. And I think he is way better than Bites, obviously, but there is that slight. But I don't know. It's such like a specific one of a kind case that, I mean, scientifically, it's good to kind of see that and study that, I think. I
No,
don't
it
know.
is. I think undoubtedly it's good to study that,
So what do you
especially at the
do?
time.
I don't know.
I wonder, just spitballing. I wonder if Lynch had any feelings about that. I wonder if Traves is almost voicing his own concerns. He's like, well, there's probably a lot of people who would like see the trailer for this movie and think like, oh, like I don't know. Let's say you're a teenager and you want to go out for the weekend. You say, well, what's playing at the mall? And it's The Elephant Man. And maybe you do have the idea like it's going to be a creepy horror movie or something, you know?
Well, you
And
see
so
that
there,
title, The Elephant Man. He's wearing a creepy mask and shit on the cover. You might think it's a horror movie.
yeah, if you just see the poster, if you're in the mall and you're like, well, what's playing? Oh, The Elephant Man, let's go see that.
Yeah.
So there were people undoubtedly drawn to this movie because of the freak show aspect of itself. And I
Yeah.
wonder if Lynch had any not remorse, but was cognizant of that and identified with Treves in one way or another because of that. Now, obviously, he paints him in a very sympathetic light.
Very, very respectful film. So
Yeah, I mean, almost to the point where John Joseph can do no wrong, you know.
yeah, there's almost like, because I've watched so many like scary horror kind of films and you're almost wondering if he's gonna start lashing out, going crazy, or having like a freak out moment or something, but it never happens. And I think that's important that they don't, because like it feels like Treves has to kind of deal with like a feral dog at first, like when you find one out in the wild and you kind of have to convince them that you're cool and that I'm going to take care of you and feed you and all that. It's like that, but there's no crazy, like a dog would try and bite and have a freak out moment, but there's none of that. And so,
a part of it is he's resigned to his fate in this movie. He has a learned helplessness, and
yeah,
also the guy's physically weak. He can't do certain basic tasks. So
that's true.
he's not going to lash out. What's he going to do? He'll
Now,
break his knuckles.
I will say, I wonder his mask. To me, when he has his mask on and shit, that's scarier to me than him as himself. I don't know. It just looks like, because there could be anything under there. I just want to say for the audience, any hardcore fans out there, I saw this movie after I made Moonman. The Posthuman was not inspired by John Merrick in any way. Now, I do wonder if.
I mean, no, but we did see Casher's face and was like, we need to put a bag over this.
That's mean. No, but I do wonder if maybe, probably not, but the Jason in Friday the 13th Part 2, if his sack over his face was inspired by this at all, or was it too close?
Maybe it was a Hangman inspiration.
I don't know, but
people have been wearing bags over their face since the first ugly cave woman was bagged by the caveman.
I know, and Jason's disfigured too, so I don't know. But anyway,
I think it's just a trope and something real. I do wonder, because he did wear that sometimes, at least to ferry him over to the hospital. I do wonder what your average Victorian thought. It's like, oh, is that a prisoner? Why is he being transported?
Maybe he's got burn scars or something. I don't know.
Could be a million things.
Well, it's like that. Even today, we have that lady, that stupid lady who had that pet chimp who ripped off her face, and she like wore like this veil when she did her interview on TV, and then at the end she like pulled her veil back and you could see her face. It was really fucking. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that, but I can imagine. Yeah, owning a chimp is dumb. I read about this one chimp who ripped a dude's nose off because he got one of the other chimps a birthday cake and not both of them, because it wasn't both their birthdays. And obviously the chimp doesn't know what a birthday is. All he knows is Bobo's getting a cake and not me. And then he ripped the guy's nose off.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, shout out to the opening of Nope by Jordan Peele. That's freaky.
Yeah, this movie, it could use more apes. That's my criticism.
I think every movie we've reviewed this year could use more apes.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes, not enough apes. Needs more apes.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Planet of the Apes,
you know what's better? The Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, because that has a real ape in it.
Okay, let's not fucking piss me off for no reason. I couldn't help. I swear to God, I couldn't help but see a slight parallel between Planet of the Apes and this film when they're having that interview with the elder medical guy, and he's not really convinced that John Merrick wasn't just learning a script, just like when they try and convince people that Taylor is a smart human. And I don't know, it was a similar kind of scene.
It is similar. They do drag that out. It works in the movie. I am kind of like, did he really not talk for like 2 days when they pick him up?
I would say that it didn't drag it out in this movie, because right after that he starts quoting scripture.
Yeah, he does.
And they go back up there like, what the hell is going on? And I thought that was
maybe he's a big fan of Gangsta's Paradise.
It came off beautiful to me, and it's like, okay, that's the only kind of hope and he can find, I guess, is
well, that's anybody in Victorian era.
Yeah,
I mean, but yeah, you had to get hope somehow. Imagine you think life is meaningless and movies haven't been invented yet, and you have to live that.
Dude, fuck that, dude.
Like, I think life is meaningless. I can distract myself 2 hours at a time. So
now, speaking of that first, the first room he's in the infirmary or whatever.
Yeah.
like despite this film being fully grounded in reality, Lynch gets in his surrealism when he can. We talked about the opening and some of the other sequences, but John's hospital room has these slants and angles and this low ceiling that is almost reminiscent of German expressionism to
Yeah,
me.
I was about to say, is it a Caligari thing?
Yeah,
That's
like
an interesting comparison, but I understand what I wasn't thinking about it, but I see it.
yeah. And
And
so
I wonder if I mean, it had to be intentional somewhat. The
yeah,
angle area.
definitely.
I doubt I don't know, maybe they constructed that room specifically for this movie, but maybe they just found a room and it was angular enough and they said, oh, let's shoot it. Because attics do have that feeling. I kind of like attic bedrooms. I don't know about you, the low ceilings and stuff. It's cozy to me. To
Yeah,
some
me
people,
too. I agree.
I could see how it could be constrictive. I don't know if I'd want to live there. Like my whole apartment is like that for my whole life.
No, but like
Also, if
having
you're
a room
hunched
like
over,
that, there's in Home Alone, they have an extra spare bedroom in the attic that Kevin has to go and sleep up there with Fuller, and he's afraid Fuller's gonna wet the bed. But we see him before he wishes his family would go away in that bedroom. It's like the coziest little bedroom. Even as a kid, I was like, damn, I wish I had an attic, dude. An
yeah,
attic like that.
Little John Hughes bedroom.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, definitely some homages to that kind of older cinema, I think there.
No, absolutely. I was thinking in the production. So this movie was released in 1980. So you very easily, in fact, I'll look at the DP, but you very easily could have had a DP who had worked on black and white movies. Now that's harder to find,
Yeah.
but because you have to light them differently. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
In this movie, it looks the same. I couldn't explain to you. I'm not a DP. I couldn't explain to you what the exact differences are, but it does interest me if you wanted to make a period accurate black and white movie now, would it be harder to find a DP who can, recreate that, or would they have to do their research, or is it not that hard? I don't know. Let's see. Freddie Francis, director of photography. Oh yeah, he's directed black and white stuff. The first photo on IMDb was black and white. Oh, he did Cape Fear, Straight Story, Glory. Okay,
He
lots
did
of stuff.
Straight Story too. Wow.
Yeah. Same DP. Tales from the Crypt. Yeah, but he directed looks like a lot of horror, actually. He mostly directed horror, so that's interesting.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because yeah.
By the way, most of the supporting cast, with the exception of Anne Bancroft, Miss Robinson, I actually didn't recognize.
I didn't
There's a lot of unknowns in this movie, and a lot of people who I think were known mostly from this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them were, I'm looking right now, like at the older doctor, chief of medicine, whoever it was. I think a lot of them were stage actors, which makes sense in period pieces,
Sure.
Because a lot of plays were old. Because what kind of nerds write plays still?
Yeah. What was Anthony Hopkins doing before this? I mean,
nothing huge, nothing that I really recognize. I mean, he had a long career, but like before Transformers: The Last Night, and
because he was a theater guy.
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of you are great actors. I mean, you start in theater. It's one of those things. This is gonna sound weird. I've taken a whole like 4 weeks of an acting class, so I know everything now. That's what I'm doing after this. But no, I do think it's interesting taking the acting class because it's not like I've seen jokes like in the show Community of acting class that are always like, "What's your trauma?" and all this stuff. But it's really more like, okay, let's look at the script and like what the character's motivations and objectives are, and like what actions can you portray to like show that emotion. It's a lot more practical than I think a lot of people think. But I do always respect people who start in the theater because I think that means they give a crap about the craft. Which doesn't mean if you start in film acting you don't. But and it, I don't know. If you're just like, I want to be on the screen, that reeks to me of being an LA douche.
Yeah.
which I don't know. I went off on a tangent there because that's obviously not Anthony Hopkins because he's Welsh. Um, no, he was in The Edwardians, a War and Peace TV adaptation. Juggernaut, bitch. I don't. Yeah, Charles Lindbergh, Chapin. Yeah, he was in a bunch of stuff. He played Adolf Hitler in a TV movie in 1981.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like
not
him
even
a
the
lot in
worst
this
villain
movie.
of his career, arguably.
I think he's really good in this movie, and he's got a great presence.
Name
And
a yeah. That go. Did we have to say that? Name a movie he's bad in.
I know, I'm just saying it's just he rides that line of like obviously he's sympathetic towards the guy and he's a good mentor, and but he's not. I don't know. He could be a little more of a prick, but he's not. I don't know. It's just well executed and
And
not.
his character arc is we do see him break
Yeah.
at the end when he beats the crap out of that guy who exploits him,
Yeah.
that piece of crap who you know pours liquor down his throat and everything with circus music blaring.
That's actually one of the more fucked up sequences I've seen in a movie. And it's not even like it's not gore, it's not fucking crazy shit. It's just sad and disgusting.
It's real.
It's
I mean, that's
real.
why when you see gore in a war movie versus a horror movie, it hits so much harder in the former
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, this happened. And the same thing that exact thing might have not happened, but it's representative of the whole man's life.
Yeah, it's like a more recent movie that I liked was 1917, and
Mhm.
when you see his friend shot down basically, and he's slumped over and he's gasping for his life, that's more fucked up to me than anything like the Evil Dead remake or anything like that. Like, despite that being a fucked up movie, it's just the realness of that scene in 1917 gets me.
I do have to ask, which Evil Dead remake? Do you mean Evil Dead 2
2013. No,
or the Evil Dead or the newest Evil Dead?
2013.
Okay.
Because that's some of the most like crazy gore like shit. It says that's my threshold of what I can handle,
Yeah.
which is crazy because that makes Cash or Dry Heave. But yeah, that movie is pretty awesome for a serious remake. But
Yeah, the last one you saw it and we haven't talked about it since. So that's
nah,
your
it's
I
it's
had no I
okay.
had no interest. I'm like, I don't need to see another Evil Dead remake.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, but speaking of actors and people of the theater, that the a famous actress comes to visit him, and he's honored because she brings him an autograph photo, and he says he's going to put it next to his mother. And as soon as he does, there seems to be like this flicker of change in this woman's eyes. It's very subtle in her performance, but I think in that moment she suddenly feels weird, kind of vain or something, and then she decides to take kind of a closer look at him figuratively and literally, and then she, I think, becomes more humbled in that moment. His presence like humbles her, and I find that really fascinating, beautiful.
Right. I find so he did go to the theater, which had been a lifelong dream of his, and he loved it.
Yeah,
And had talked about it as if it was real.
yeah,
Obviously he didn't know, he knew it wasn't, but he's like, ah. Which is insane. I mean, that's most people back in those days didn't even get to go to the theater, and that's the biggest spectacle you could see. And even back then they adapted books for the theater because even back then they knew reading was for nerds.
yeah.
Um, so I thought it was, I don't know. How did you feel about the scene where they all give him a standing ovation?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like taking a kid with cancer to Disney World. I don't know.
You know what it's like? It's like when people are like, I'm going to give a bunch of money to this homeless guy and then film it and upload it to social media.
Which is another major problem I see on TikTok. That is a big trend. I'm going to do all these nice things for these homeless people, and I'm going to make money off of it, clout as much as I can. So I don't know, but all these people, they're not gaining anything from this. They just want to appreciate this guy, and I think they're happy to see him there enjoying the theater. I don't know.
I also think it's social pressure. Because what if
Yeah.
you're the guy, like, Well,
Maybe
this
so.
guy's standing and applauding, so I feel that at normal standing ovations just for the show. I'm like, dude, I don't want to get up, but everybody else is, and I'll look like an a-hole if I don't. And I can't see right now anyway, because this dude's butt is in front of me, and I don't want to stare at that. So I gotta stand up.
Yeah.
The actors, that's how I feel. Um, and that's without a deformed.
And that's like what films that premiere at Cannes. That's like you get like a minimum 5 minute standing ovation. It's like, well, what's
Not
the point?
always. If your film's really bad,
I know, but like
I've seen videos of that where it's like 8 seconds.
I know, but fucking Indiana Jones 5 got a standing ovation, okay?
They all
So
do. It's like how you grade it.
I know, but
It's a
it's
weird
like,
thing.
what's the point? I don't know. Either way, it is cool that he gets to enter this world of fantasy at the theater and experience that and be captured by that for a little while. At
It
least
is very
once.
Make-A-Wishy, though. You're right.
Yeah, but I mean, his life's short. He's dealing with some bullshit. I don't fucking mind it personally of treating him like letting him do what he wants. I see why not. Fuck it.
I think maybe part of my problem with this movie is, again, like The Blind Side, a movie I haven't seen, by the way, and kind of refuse to.
Yeah.
But I'll still openly shit on it. I don't care. Just because I remember in high school all the like, I don't know, Republican kids loving it, and I'm like, well, this movie must not be good. The They portray whatever his name is, Michael, I don't know, the football player is almost like an idiot who had like never played football before. And then in real life, he's like, I've been playing football my whole life. How do you think I was good at it?
Yeah.
I wasn't just like a natural ability. And then there's an argument that maybe this family took an interest in him because of his talent, athletic talent. I don't even think he got royalties from that movie until recently. He had to
Yeah.
fight in court. Yeah, so that's already sketchy, Hollywood. But part of this is they not as medically a simpleton, but the film almost portrays him as a simpleton or as a bit naive. When I think, given his life experience, he would be anything but naive. I mean, he would be unaware of certain aspects of the world. He was uncomfortable around women because he, other than his mother, he hadn't obviously interacted with them. And back then, you didn't interact with the opposite sex as much anyway. Platonic friendships were not as common, I think. I mean, they were around, of course, but I almost wish the film had dug into, and I understand why it didn't because time, had dug into his reaction or how aware was he being used when these upper society, high society types came and got tea with him. Were they there to gawk? And I don't think there's anything wrong with being curious. But did he ever feel that? And the movie doesn't really address that.
I think he was just happy to be there and not in his fucking carnival. And
right at the end of the day, he's like, I'm at a carnival or a workhouse, so this is pretty sweet.
And from this film's narrative, since we don't really see any of his earlier life, to me it just feels like all he knows is this fucked up carnival world. So yeah, I would take anything other than being fucking gawked at by peasants all day. Like drunkard, weirdo, low life individuals.
Yeah, I mean, they did shut down freak shows and stuff, and that's one reason I fell out of favor, because I guess the government didn't like them either, or maybe it just attracted the wrong crowd. I don't know if there's anything on the books about it being illegal, but
yeah,
but we should bring that back
single-handedly. You go ahead.
That's a diversity question. This movie couldn't be made today. Could Freaks be made today, where they get a bunch of real? Because then you could argue like, well, what if they wanted to make that movie, but they didn't cast actual like little people? We had this problem with Snow White.
Yeah, I hate to bring that up, but it's true. Fake Disney execs were trying to be so fake progressive that it turned into a circle, and they were going to remake Snow White, and then they were going to have all these different characters instead of little people. And then little people were like, hey, you can do dwarves, just make them have actual character and not just be, stupid.
But then they CG'd the dwarves and they look like the standard, like anti-Semitic dwarf.
It looks horrible. And it's like, we want jobs in Hollywood. Please give us jobs. A lot of us are out here struggling, little people, actors. And then Disney's like, well, we're just going to make them CG and then no one can complain. It's like, okay, you've missed the entire point, but okay.
Worse, because it's not creatives making the decision.
Yeah.
Reactionary. These are the same. Yeah. I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, we do get
I do think also part of it is the with all the sanctimoniousness. Now we have folk liberalism. But back then it was, Christianity. We have that scene where the board of directors of the hospital, one of them's like, we shouldn't just provide free care to a patient who's incurable when that bed can be used for somebody else. And then of course Alexandra,
that would be socialism.
Princess of Wales. Yeah, now it's using people's hard-earned tax dollars. It's pretty much like reads a letter from Queen Victoria and says, hey, this is the good Christian thing to do.
Christian.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what you have to appeal to,
I know, yeah.
Because part of the social function of religion is it's the same sort of social pressure to make people less selfish. Ideally. Well, I don't know.
Yeah. And of course that one guy goes back on it, and it's that's one humorous moment. And then there's one more humorous moment. There's a little bit of levity, and it's when that nurse knocks out that douchebag. And it's just like, oh, okay, a little she has like a one-liner, and it's, I don't know, it's cool
to come up. And I think it's kind of silly. I mean, I don't know, I always think it's silly movies where they just go down in one hit like that, because that's not how it works. But it did seem a bit cartoonish, almost Elmer Fudd, how she just knocks it like gonk.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know.
It's also very satisfying for the audience because we're supposed to hate this guy.
Yeah.
This is definitely the most blatant emotional manipulation in a Lynch film, and it works.
It works.
It worked on me.
And we get extreme. The extreme side is when we get that nightmare sequence, when we see all the factory stuff, which of course Lynch is obsessed with, as well as like the mirror, which John's afraid of, and he gets kicked over and over by people before he wakes up. And I guess, has he not looked in a mirror before? Or
they did say his that in real life they intentionally didn't put mirrors in his room, but he has the window right there, and you as the viewer can see his reflection in the window. So I don't know, did he have bad vision on account of this too?
Yeah, maybe.
Or it's a movie. Know. That's all.
It is a movie, but it does set up that horrific scene when that guy brings all those people into his room. They show him his reflection in the mirror, and he lets out a scream that's like pathetic, but like that's the point, is that it is a very sad and pathetic scream. It's not like this intense horror kind of outburst. It is very like realistic, sad, and it makes the scene way even more fucked up. They're like pouring liquor down his throat and like jumping on him, and like he's I don't know. It's
forcing him to kiss prostitutes.
Yeah, that's demented, dude.
But people don't see him as human. I wonder if.
Plus, he was a real man in real life, so it adds weight to it.
And I don't know. Who knows if that happened? Stuff like that probably happened. Yeah. I wonder if part of this movie, I think, that appeals to people is the idea that, like, well, we've moved past that as a society. And have we? Because we've mentioned all this stuff on social media. And I think it's human nature, by the way, to not, be interested in that stuff. I'll look up, I'm weird like this. I'll look up skin diseases and stuff and research it on my own just because I find it interesting.
Sure.
And kind of macabre. But I also wonder if it's kind of like how something like Driving Miss Daisy, and a lot of your Oscar bait racism movies, racism's always in the past. And I think part of the function of that is so modern audiences can feel good about themselves that we live in a more progressive society. And arguably it helps sweep under the rug the iniquities that do exist in our society, because people can point to that to Driving Miss Daisy, beating Do the Right Thing for Best Picture. Why? I didn't even finish that movie. It was on TV. There were like 45 minutes. I'm like,
It was
I'm
on
good.
TV a bunch when I was a kid. My mom and dad liked it, but I don't really remember it
I was
too much.
watching, and I was an adult too, and I was like, dude, screw this movie. I don't know. And Danny Aykroyd has a southern accent, and it's weird, and I wish he was talking about UFOs instead.
Crystal Head vodka, yeah.
Yeah. I got through Coneheads the other day. I could do that better. Granted, I was drunk. But
Oh, okay. Jesus. Ugh. That's more offensive than the Elephant Man.
Yeah, that's that's worse. It's a weird movie.
Now, I was wondering, like, I guess John Merrick's really weak because you got because at first I was like, why doesn't he just strangle Bites when Bites tries to take him back away, or like yell or scream or throw a fit or something? I don't know. We don't really get to see that. He's also
his spine's all crooked. One of his arms doesn't work pretty much at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely weak.
Well, he should have fucking lifted, dude. Imagine if we got like the shot of him like hunched over on the bed, like lifting weights with his one good arm and shit.
Yeah, I was really disappointed. I went into this movie thinking it was about a man with the strength of an elephant.
Or the dick of an elephant.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. We do get the sequence where he goes back overseas to do fucked up shows again. And at this
Which
point,
did happen.
He can't even stand up. He falls over.
What? But he did it willingly. But he did get robbed of $50 or 50 pounds or whatever. I don't know. Which in today's equivalent was like 5,000-6,000 pounds. So a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
And he did have to find his way back.
Yeah, but like, yeah, so if it's not accurate, that's fine. I don't really care because the imagery of Bites taking Merrick to the cage and like shoving him in the cage with the monkeys and stuff is one of the more demented things I've seen, and it's very moody. And that whole set with like the back of the carnival and stuff,
and they got real baboons. And you know what? I'm sorry what I said earlier. I forgot there are apes in this movie. I forgot. So yeah. Well, I take it back. Could be more, but that's it's a good start.
But it's like that's like ultimately probably the most emotionally manipulative moment of the film is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I can't help but think it's awesome because it's just, I don't know, executed so well, and then you get that nice scene of like the quote unquote freaks rescuing him, and the boy Bites his boy, doesn't say anything. You can see that throughout the film you can see him wanting to tell his dad no and stuff like that.
Is that his dad, or is that like an orphan boy that just?
I think it's just an orphan boy, but yeah, that was a common thing.
Tiny Tim the whole time.
I think that was a common thing back then. Like peddlers would take like an orphan under their wing and carry them around and do.
Yeah, and then he can also use them like Daniel Plainview uses his son as part of his pitch.
Yeah,
this is my son, and this is the freak.
My favorite example of that is in Sweeney Todd. Pirelli, who's played by Sacha Baron Cohen, has his own little orphan boy to do his bidding and help him sell bullshit to idiots. I don't know. That's a fun kind of.
Do you ever think like, I don't want a kid, but also my parents made me do chores around the house as a kid, and it would be kind of nice to have somebody like do laundry for me?
That's terrible, but true. Yeah.
Yeah.
More importantly, I want like a kid to show all the cool movies I liked growing up and be like, hey, look at this. Check this out.
No, I want a kid. I just want to put a kid to work.
Oh, okay. Send him to the factories.
Yeah, dude. Just have him just sweep my chimney in my 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. No, but I just don't want any of the work. I don't want to have to wait until the kid's 10 years old. And then I'm like, okay, now you're cool. Now we can watch cool shit,
Yeah, well, and then you would have to be. Yeah, that's demented, Adrian. I can see you trying to show him Mulholland Drive. He's like 4.
No. I would show him all my favorites growing up, but yeah, too much pain in the ass just to, I can just watch movies with you and fucking Casher, and
I'll be your boy.
Yeah. Okay, good.
You can be my daddy.
Now, I'm gonna move on from that line of thought. When he gets back to Britain, or yeah, the UK or whatever, he's
London, yeah.
he's at the train station,
Was the kingdom united at this point? Did Arthur do that? I don't know the history.
and he has
The
those
the disunited kingdom.
stupid annoying boys following him around and
The
wanting to see
Groogs.
what he's got under his mask. If I were him, I would have like fucked with the kids, like scared the shit out of them somehow so they would fuck off. Yeah, like take off the mask or something for a second and be like, fuck off. I don't know. But he's scared of any interaction. He's like my cat Beckett, like is weak willed and just can't handle
Yeah,
anything.
John Merrick was real weak willed.
No, I mean
He
just
was, he was beta. It's fine.
every little thing, imagine everyone screaming at the side of you your whole life, what that would do to you mentally. Yeah, of course he's going to be a fragile guy.
Well, no, and this is
Can't even imagine it.
the climax of the movie and the climax of his character arc.
Yeah.
I think earlier the climax of Treves is when he attacks what's his name, the night porter, I guess.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that guy, and which is kind of an interesting arc. He actually almost finds his humanity in his anger and just lashing out. In that he is emotionally invested and he's not just treating John as a scientific curiosity.
Right.
And we obviously see it in the very quoted, especially by my dad. He's backed into the urinals and gives the I am not an elephant, I am not an animal, I am a man, I am a human being.
Yeah.
And
which I think works really well.
It's powerful.
It is.
It works very well.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a famous quote.
I'm wondering if when he accidentally knocks over that little girl while he's being chased and she screams, and I wonder, I don't want this to sound wrong. I wonder if it's like a reference to like maybe like Frankenstein or like another older picture where he accidentally, like Frankenstein accidentally scares a kid, but he's actually soft, like not trying to understand the world around him kind of guy. So I don't know.
No, it could be, but it could also just be a mere plot device of like, hey, we're, this is why the cops are chasing him, and this is why a mob forms.
Yeah,
because he knocks over a girl, and then the mom has to be caring about it.
Yeah, for sure. What also throughout the film, once he gets his own little place, his own official setup, he starts building a cathedral out of like paper and whatnot. And what do you think the significance of this cathedral he's building is? Because he hasn't really seen it in his own eyes, just from a distance. Is it like it's his own escape or something? Or
well, that's true, and it's something he really did. He's saying he's having to use his imagination, and I think what it is he's having to imagine a better life as he has his entire life.
Yeah,
and part of that is by imagining a better afterlife. That's why he's so religious. Because again, what else is he gonna do?
Yeah,
he has to have some hope. Like maybe I'll be cured in the next life. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Maybe it's just having that small control over something too.
It is. It's also that. It's also showing that he's intelligent.
Because toward the final sequence of the film, we get like a close up of the completed cathedral that he rebuilt, I guess, after coming back, because it got destroyed. That's one of the worst parts, is that it gets trampled on when they bring all those people in there. But yeah. And we get this really tragic but beautiful sequence where he takes a look around his room and sees everything in his own way that he's accomplished, I guess, and collected. And he just wants to lie down and sleep like a normal person just one time. And he's aware that he's dying. So I don't know. I think it's a beautiful ending. I think the first time I watched it, I don't know. I was like, what is this ending? But this time I'm like, yeah, this is beautiful.
It is. He sees his mom. She says some things. It's very Lynchian.
Yeah.
But she's got to be into that. I understand how some people might find it hokey, but I'm like, it's Lynch. generally speaking.
I'm a Spielberg super fan, so of course I'm gonna like something like this.
Yeah, of course. Well, so this is where I talk about the real life aspect.
Yeah,
To cap this off. So the way he died is by trying to sleep like a normal person.
yeah,
Because he used to sleep with sitting up with his head in his knees, in
yeah.
order to support his head. Um, and they found him dead with a broken spine
Damn.
because with weak muscles and all that. He had tried to sleep like a normal person. Now, some people make the argument, and Ebert brings this up in his review, which is why I went down the rabbit hole with this, that it was suicide, that he knew he would die that way. I don't know how you can know that, though. That seems like speculation. Because some of the details of his life, especially his early life, are suspect. And now this movie is, and other adaptations, such as a play by the same name, is based off largely the writing of Treves, who is likely to have portrayed himself as having a deeper friendship with Merrick than he actually had. Part of that's because in the book, he calls him John, but his name is Joseph. His birth name's Joseph, unless he just went by John. But why wouldn't he go by Joe then?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then some of the details of his early life are actually, when compared against other sources, are wrong. So there's the definite possibility that compared to this movie, Treves's interest was much more scientific and not personal, which isn't to say that he would be callous necessarily, but is the reason we even know about this man's life is because a surgeon back in the day also tried to profit off this man's life by writing a book about it. But he was, though, all that's true about, he was visited by high society and was known in London as the Elephant Man. All of that is true.
Yeah,
That's just another layer to the
that
controversy.
is definitely interesting, and I wonder. Huh. I wonder if
Here's
he.
another question: does it matter?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. But
And
also,
you're less of a stickler for historical accuracy than I am, and I don't know if
yeah,
that is,
it
I maybe that's
definitely it goes from case to case. But yeah,
it goes from I'm less
I know
concerned about
Mark.
this.
I know deep down Mark Zuckerberg was an asshole no matter what. So, you know.
Yeah, part of that, I think Jesse Eisenberg's performance is, it gets memed on a lot, but honestly, to be able to carry that character, to create that interpretation of that character and carry it through a 2.5 hour movie and have it work the whole way through
Yeah,
is a feat of acting.
I
Period.
believe it is
It's
too.
like not any actor could just do that, and make it. I mean, everybody can like do the voice and do like a Saturday Night Live version of it, but to actually have it and like generate pathos. But it does take me out of the movie that I watch an interview with Zuckerberg and he's just normal awkward nerd, not hyper awkward nerd like in the
Yeah.
movie. Arguably more unsettling. Yeah, I think I don't like that movie because it makes Zuckerberg relatable, and I don't like that. Man,
um.
I should give that movie a rewatch.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy
think it's, and
how
also part of it's the journalist in me. You know that.
you see how far shit's gone with social media. How we thought it was already crazy in 2010. We had no idea.
Quaint.
I wonder. So John Merrick, he knew how to read, obviously, because he read scripture, but I guess they couldn't teach him how to write with his good arm,
I
or
don't
did
know.
because you would think a guy like that would want to keep like a diary or something, and then we would have like a better insight to what maybe he was thinking.
I don't know if there were some things that he allegedly had written, but then the
Yeah,
question is,
yeah,
did he actually write that?
like Helen Keller.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, some people don't think they think that was completely made up bullshit.
Like
Helen Keller.
that Helen Keller wrote books and stuff.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly.
Oh, I didn't know that. But the shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, um, Treves was often the only one who could really communicate with him because it was so hard for him to speak.
Yeah,
And Treves got used to his way of speaking, but a lot of your average person wouldn't be able to immediately understand him. So,
yeah,
so there are things, maybe he wrote notes, but I didn't read anything about that on my,
yeah. Well,
cursory Wikipedia research.
I watched
Also,
Attack the Block.
I don't want a movie where I can't understand them the whole time.
I watched Attack the Block without subtitles, so I'm okay. I could probably figure it out.
Yeah, well, I watched Train Spotting with subtitles, so I'm an idiot. That's one of my most embarrassing, like, coming clean movie moments. Period.
What? That you use subtitles? Who gives a
For
shit?
a movie in English? Yeah,
It's pretty thick.
it's pretty thick.
No,
That
I'm
makes
not
me
gonna.
feel better about myself when I have trouble
I'm not gonna
understanding.
give you shit for that. That's insane.
I feel better. Well, no, I feel better about when I don't. When I feel embarrassed about having trouble with certain Spanish accents, I think, well, I couldn't understand Train Spotting either, so I must not be that dumb.
I am better, I'd say, than most at understanding thick British and Scottish and Irish accents. But
Yeah. I'm
most
just more
people,
American.
I
Better American.
if I was watching with Elephant Man with anyone else, like my mom or something, I would have turned on subtitles for it because John Merrick, he is quiet and he's kind of hard to understand. So
There were a few lines where I had trouble.
yeah, but yeah, no, there's no problem there.
That's
But
fine.
no,
And this is back when audio mixing was better than in modern movies.
yeah, Jesus, yeah. Who would be the worst current working director to take on the Elephant Man remake?
Uwe Boll, is he still around?
No, he's. I think he's retired.
Yeah, he is. He's like, I did all my tax fraud already.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad we got a good, like, pretty much ground in reality biopic out of Lynch. You know, his own flair. It works so well, and I'm glad. Yeah, because it's just, yeah, I like seeing that. I like directors changing it up a bit with their style, stuff like that. You know.
No, and it does show how versatile of a director he is. Because I do think people who aren't really acquainted with Lynch or who just bounce off of him kind of view him as this just weird or inscrutable director.
Yeah.
But he's a sweetheart at his core, which I think, now with YouTube interviews and memes and stuff, we kind of know that more. But if you had only seen Fire Walk with Me, and that was the only Lynch you'd see, you'd be like, what sort of effed up individual made this?
Yeah.
But I think that's going back to it, just to put a bow on this whole thing. I think that's one reason Lynch identifies with the freaks, because he probably, in some ways in his life, obviously not to that degree, has been judged for being a weirdo. When at his core, he is that soft person.
And the most important thing is that his experimentations with his art is very honest to himself. It's not contrived at all. It's not experimental or avant-garde for the sake of it. It's very much how he views things and how he wants to present them to us. So that's the big key factor here.
He works from his subconscious.
He's not pretentious.
Yep.
And that's the hardest thing, is like, I see people, younger folks especially, but I see people on comments on YouTube and TikTok on certain film scenes that I look up, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so pretentious." And I'm like, dude, no, this is very honest art. You're not, you don't realize what being pretentious is, or you just don't, like, you don't have to understand everything in a scene.
It's all about intent. And there's a difference between, I'm trying to make grand statements about humanity, but I'm failing in my delivery because I don't have the talent, versus this is something I deeply personally believe or feel, or I have a very strong emotion, and using the form, this is the best way I can convey it. So I think if it's based in emotion versus, I don't know, social commentary, I think there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Although there's social commentary in this movie.
Obviously, this story meant a lot to him. So yeah. And that's the thing. There's a common thing with working directors where their first film is a big banger, and then they often have that problem where their sophomore one is called a sophomore slump. This is very much not that. This is a very strong second entry for a theatrical film. And so, and it's just cool how different it is from Eraserhead. And I don't know. I like to see that shit. Trying to think of notable sophomore slumps, like Elysium, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of movies, that's really common. A lot of movies, especially now, you get an indie director and let them direct a blockbuster because they have some talent and they have some clout. And as a studio, you can pretend like you care about that sort of thing. But also, they don't have so much clout in the industry that they can push you around the way a Spielberg or a Cameron can.
Yeah. You think of the opposite, where David Fincher, he directs Alien 3 as a working man, journeyman kind of director, kind of for hire thing. And then he comes out of the gate with 7, and it's like, oh shit, this guy's got the juice. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Different cases, but I don't know. It's fascinating. Anyway, that's The Elephant Man, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'm not sure what next week's is. I forgot. I'll have to look that up later. But tune in next week regardless, because it's gonna be a banger. We only do the most Kino films here. Not really. There's a few that some of us might argue are not.
Yeah, like Annette.
Yeah, that's my biggest example. I love Annette. Casher hates it. But yeah, tune in next week. I know at some point this month, for Thanksgiving, I want to do The Incredibles, because that came out, and it's not exactly 20 years, but 19 years ago, during Thanksgiving week. I remember going to see it with my mom, so I'm nostalgic for that. And I think it's the best Incredibles movie. So look forward to that this week, because we don't do many children's films on here. So, family films. Look forward to that. Other than that, follow Scott on Instagram.
Scott K Comedy.
Follow us on Instagram, and whatever you want to do, like, subscribe, buy my book, etc., etc. The usual stuff. Like this video.
You already said that.
Subscribe, etc.
You already said that.
I don't care. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.